and she's slowly driving. It's a slow motion thing, and she's just slowly going toward the edge of this cliff thing. And I'm like hitting the back of the car, like, stop, Haley, stop. The whole front end of the car goes straight down off this cliff.
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God, those moments when heaven and earth collide. And we see God. We see His hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention, inviting us into a closer relationship. Here we share stories of encounter with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences, big and little, God incidents. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. Welcome to episode 93 of Touched by Heaven. Somebody really famous 2,000 years ago said something like, who lights a lamp and then sticks it under a bed? The answer, of course, is someone who would like to illuminate dust bunnies, which is a Bible verse that was removed very early on in the editing. It just didn't work. Who does? Who lights a lamp and sticks it under the bed? Because Christ is the light, right? Of course, the light of the world. And He's still here now, walking amongst us, which is why we showcase not just what He did 2,000 years ago, but what He's doing right now. Something that I was made aware of this week I had not noticed before. In Genesis, in creation, it says right there on day one, in the beginning, God said, let there be light. And it was good, right? But then it says, God separated the light from the darkness. Doesn't say darkness is good, by the way. Light good. Darkness, And there are a lot of theologians who believe tucked inside that Bible verse is the fall. The fall of the angels, when a third of the angels fell, betrayed God. The angels, God's first creation. It didn't take long into creation before there was the fall. God separated the light, which is good, from the darkness. So let's begin there with our guest today. Her name is Angela. We're going to go back to when she was in college, about 21 years old, and feeling lost, as many of us are at age 21. Didn't know which way to go, didn't know which way was up, didn't know. She just was very, very confused in her life at that time. And she had a dream.
I just had a very, very vivid dream.
This battle of light and darkness.
I was standing on the back porch of this house, and it was dark and old, and I'm just standing there, like, and the field was all dark, but I could see in the distance this, like, a freeway, and it was just packed full of cars, and I remember just fixating on those cars and watching all the white lights go one way and all the red lights go the other way, and I was, like, just really watching, and just feeling numb, like lost. All of a sudden, the sky just kind of opened up, and this bright light, it was so bright, and I looked up, and all of a sudden, I started going upward, and I was being lifted up to the sky, and nothing was said. I just floated and just kind of it was Jesus, and I was standing right in front of Him face to face, and we were just, like, staring at each other, but it was the most calming, assuring, like, things are going to be okay kind of feel. And it was so powerful. I've never forgotten it.
Why do you think that moment?
I really think it was this assurance that things were going to be okay, because I felt so lost.
In the beginning, there was light, and the light and the darkness were separated, which brings us to dream number 2 of Angela's. When she and her family were debating on whether or not to buy a particular house, it would be a big step. But once again, here's this light and darkness.
Of course, that night I dreamt. I was in another dark house. I don't understand where these houses come from, but there was no lights on in this house. I was standing in an empty house in this huge window in front of me, and it overlooked just countryside, darkness, and I could see this, as far as I could see, this little spot of light, and it just kept coming closer and closer and closer and closer, and I was just totally watching it. And when it started coming up to the window, and it was an angel, and it was so amazingly beautiful, and she just floated right in front of me and just was, like, floating and staring at me. And again, felt like that was everything's going to be okay kind of feel. And I woke up and thought, wow, we must be okay to go forward and buy this home. I kind of took it as an answer of things would be okay.
The light of an angel, separated from the darkness, as it has been since the beginning.
I was listening. You always say at the end, that, hey, if you got a story, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to do that. And then I just started typing.
You don't obey
I'm like,
yourself very well.
no, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to just do this, see what
and the
happens.
and the Spirit took over and away you went. There you go. There you go. You'll note that the lamp has already been lit, and we're holding it high, and it's not going under the bed anytime soon. Already we've had encounters within dreams with Jesus Christ, the light, and with his angels. What's still to go? Oh, we have more angels coming up, divine interventions, visions, all kinds of good stuff coming up, all associated with the light that we want everyone to be able to see, so we hold it high. But living here on earth also involves darkness, and that's to come too, a sea of darkness. But what is so impressive about Angela is how she just keeps looking up to the light. She keeps looking upward to heaven. And that heavenly light with one of our favorite topics, guardian angels.
We were traveling. I was in our truck, and we had all 4 kids with us, and we were at a stoplight. And my daughter Jordan was sitting in the middle in the front, and she kept saying, Mom, 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 Mom. I'm like, I'm hearing her, but I'm not really, I must have been focused on something else. And she just kept saying it over and over. And when the light turned green, I saw it turn green, but she had said Mom so many times. I didn't go. I just stayed there, and I looked at her and I go, what? And I looked back because I knew I had to go, and this car comes barreling through the intersection at probably 30, 40 miles an hour and ran a red light, and we all just froze. We were like, that would have been us. We would have been T-boned by this car.
And your daughter was poked to say, Mom, Mom, Mom.
Yeah. I was beside myself for about 3 days after that. I just was so crazy.
Yeah. We've had a few of those on the podcast as well, where it's like, what's my hurry? And then suddenly here comes the 18-wheeler right through, blowing through a red light. You never know.
Yeah, and then it was probably, well, it was about 2.5 years ago. My 20-year-old daughter had gotten in a head-on collision. She was late for work. It was Easter morning, and 2017. And she there's a really sharp corner by her dad's house, but we know she crossed the line when she made that corner and went head on with another car. And her dad was outside and actually heard it because it's pretty close to his house. And so he runs down there, and there was a firefighter volunteering picking up garbage in the ditches on that corner, which was the weirdest thing on Easter.
He was working on Easter doing this?
Yes. That's what the weird thing was. It was like, why would he be doing that on Easter? Anyway, so he runs down there, and this firefighter guy, they both go straight to her car, and her seatbelt had broke and had threw her into the back window. Her car was in 3 pieces. And it just blows my mind that car did that. So her dad and this firefighter pulled her out, and the firefighter gave her CPR and brought her back. She wasn't breathing. The weird thing is a lot of people that showed up on the scene, and the people that showed up, like family and friends, or that knew so-and-so, that knew this guy, they were like, it was almost like a big group of extended family that was helping the situation. It was weird.
Kaylee was flown by helicopter to the nearest trauma center in Seattle, Washington.
She couldn't open her eyes, but we each had her dad and I had a hand, and we're talking to her like, Kaylee, can you hear us? Can you hear us? And, squeeze our hand. And she'd just go crazy, like, squeeze your dad's hand, squeeze your other hand. And she'd try her other hand. And, we knew she could hear us. And so we were able to tell her how much we love her and all that stuff. And then they sedated her And um, she really didn't have any injuries, other than a little cut here and there. It was a hit to the head is what got her. But
5 days into Kaylee's hospitalization, the pastor of a friend is coming to the hospital to visit Kaylee. He's coming up the elevator, and in the elevator, he has a vision.
he's known to see visions and things like that. And so they brought him up. He had told me that he saw her sitting in a field of flowers with Jesus, talking to him and asking him all sorts of questions about life and heaven and her curiosity of why the world it is what it is, and all that stuff. And that's something I could see her totally doing. She always had those questions about God and everything, and she believed, but she was always like, like we all question things at times. And it was the first night I chose to go home. They said she was somewhat in a state where they thought she could possibly recover to some degree, but we weren't sure. And I thought, okay, well, I'll go home. Well, that night she hemorrhaged at the brainstem, and that was it. And so then at that point, of course, we had to make a decision to let her go. And which probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I started having dreams, and I really wanted to know what happened with the accident.
Did you ever talk to the other driver?
No, I wanted to, but I'm so nervous about that. I don't know. It was an older couple. We know they were slightly injured and had gone to a hospital here, but they were released, so they were okay to some degree. I heard down the road later that they were still, in therapies of some kind, trying to still recover. But
that's the other part of it, is that they now have to carry that with them forever. Even if it's not their fault, you still carry that.
I know. I think about that all the time, and I have thought of wanting to meet them. I sit and think about feeling the way I feel the rest of my life. It's just a crazy feeling. You lose a child. It's this horrible feeling all the time. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to feel this way all the time. Somehow, can you bring some kind of peace to this?
Along the way, God has given that gift of peace to Angela and the family through a series of experiences.
I've been woken up by physical touch. I've heard things. I've seen so many things. And a lot of it's to do with her and Jesus.
Talk about it.
Well, the one when I was questioning, like what happened with the accident, I just wanted some kind of answers. And I don't think we'll ever truly know. I mean, I have a big hunch how it happened, but when I prayed for that night, just him give me some kind of answers of something. And so I did. I had this dream, and she was with me, and my dad was there, and he was taken off, and she tried to climb in. Kaylee tried to climb in the driver's seat of his truck, and I said, "No, Kaylee." I said, "Dad's driving. Grandpa's driving." And so then she hops out. She said nothing in the stream. Like, she was just there. And then she went and sat down on the side of the yard. And then he takes off, and then I hear this car. And I'm looking back, and Kaylee's in a car. And she's slowly driving. It's a slow motion thing. And she's just slowly going toward the edge of this cliff thing. And I'm like hitting the back of the car, like, stop, Kaylee, stop. Don't, trying to stop the vehicle. And she goes, it's just slow motion, though. It was the weirdest thing. And she goes over, the whole front end of the car goes straight down off this cliff. It lands and nosedives and hits. Everything's in slow motion. I'm watching her hit the steering wheel, come back. The car lands on all four wheels. The top of the car is gone now, like just gone. She's sitting in the back seat, totally perfect, in a most beautiful dress. Her hair's done perfectly. Her hands are folded in her lap, and she slowly looks up at me and smiles. I'm like, I'm okay, Mom. Like, yeah, this happened, but I'm okay. And oh my gosh, that was good enough for me, that dream.
A ray of light in a world that now feels very dark. But that ray of light is now beginning to encompass the entire family.
I always had to have Kaylee's door open because it bugged me that her door was shut. And it just felt like if I shut it, I was shutting her out. So I opened every day, and every night I'd go in and I'd pray and talk to her, and then I'd go and shut the door for the night. And like I always had. And when I was in there one night, Darian had come in, my son, and he used to tell me how much he missed Kaylee, and we're talking about it. And I go, "Can you turn off the light and shut the door when you're done?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." And I saw him do it. He left and shut the door. As soon as I walked out of the bathroom, I looked and her door was open. So I went to grab the door to shut it, and she had this battery operated candle on the very, very top shelf. I can't even reach it. I'd have to get a chair to get it. It was way high, and it was on. It was totally glowing.
And it was definitely off before.
Yeah, there have been several nights that we had gone in there, and I would have noticed that candle going because it's just glowing. The whole ceiling was glowing. And as soon as I saw that, I just kind of froze, and I'm like, "Darian," I said, "Did you come here?" And he's like, "No." And so I called everyone. I'm like, my husband, Jordan, I'm like, "Everybody, look at this." I go, "Did any of you turn this on?" And they're like, "No." Like, they're thinking I'm weird asking, right? And my husband could barely reach it. I mean, he reached up to grab it, and it was in the on position. And then he turned it off, and it went off. I'm so open to watching for signs and things, you know. I need to give her hugs. You know, I need to see her and hear her voice. You know, and that night I'll dream about it, and I'll see her, and just, she's always like, "Hi, Mom," and she's running to me, and we sit and we talk and just hang out. It's cool. And then I wake up and I feel like I've seen her.
Angela had one particular dream that was unusual because of Kaylee's age in the dream. Kaylee, remember, was 20 when she passed. And in this particular dream, Angela is walking through an elementary school through the lunchroom, and she either doesn't recognize or doesn't see her 8-year-old daughter, Kaylee.
All of a sudden I see this little girl. She's like, "Mom." And she's like, "Hi, Mom." And she's getting up from the table. She's running to me. And back then she had this little bob haircut and this cute little pink zipper coat she always wore. And she's hugging me. She goes, "It's Kaylee, it's Kaylee." And I'm just like hugging this little girl. I've never dreamt of my kids young like that. Just, I've always dreamt of at the age that they are in real life.
What Angela didn't know is that while Kaylee was in the hospital, of course, lots of people are praying, right? There's lots of prayer groups being formed. One of those prayer groups was run by Angela's sister-in-law. And at her prayer group, there was a gentleman that people didn't know that much about. But he had an experience. He came up after this prayer meeting, and he said to Angela's sister-in-law that he had had a vision. And that in that vision, what he had learned was that Kaylee had had 2 experiences with Jesus. One of those experiences, he said, was when she was 8 years old.
And then she's telling me this, and then I'm thinking, I just dreamt of an 8-year-old dream. And I thought, you know, what would be her encounter at 8? And I'm thinking, that's when she was baptized. We baptized her at 8 years old in the river at a church camp. And she was 8 years old. And I'm like, that's her encounter. We're both just like blown away. In fact, I have a scrapbook that I kept of all these things that have happened, and I put all these pictures in there of things, the story, and, you know, things that I've, you know, "Hey, God, give me this answer in a dream if you can." And I write that, and then what I dreamt that night and like the answers to it, you know. And there's a picture involved, I'd get the picture developed and I'd put it in here and have it go with it. And
it's impossible right here and now to share all the experiences Angela's had or the family has had. Moments of hearing Kaylee's voice or feeling a touch or a dream, seeing things that suddenly aren't there anymore. There's so many, but Angela has saved them all. She continues to save them. Moments that help fortify her faith, moments that keep everything together in a still difficult, very difficult time, but moments that remind the entire family that God is with them.
I just am so appreciative by the way I get answers. I really feel not every time I've prayed for something, I get an answer, but more than half the time it will show up. One really cool thing that happened, I was remodeling and painting, working in the bathroom. Well, at the corner of my eye, I thought I saw somebody go walk by the door. And I looked and I thought, well, that was weird because I just got done talking to Jordan. She was on her bed, and I know Darian was in his room reading. I'm like, that was weird. And then I'm like looking, kind of questioning what I just saw. And then we have a little Yorkie, and he's just right behind this person or like looking up, like trotting behind him, like he's excited following. And I'm like, that's weird. And then all of a sudden, just down that hall, the direction that the dog was going was Darian's room. And he's like, Mom. I'm like, so I go down there, and this was like, and I go, what? And he goes, Mom, I just saw a girl walk by my door. And I always play it down like, really? Are you sure it wasn't a shadow? Are you sure it wasn't? Because I want to hear what they're really going to say, and how strong they feel about it. And he's like, no, Mom, I saw a girl walk by my door. She was wearing a pink shirt and purple pants. And I said, that's really weird because just 30 seconds ago, I thought I saw somebody walk by the door of the bathroom and the dog was following it. But by the way, the clothes he described reminded me when Kaylee was younger. What is it? The 8-year-old thing again? I don't know. And I just so believe that I don't know if it's her, if it's God's angels, or what is happening, but there's so many things that I witnessed.
Where does Angela's faith come from? It's not like she was brought up in faith. She was pretty much left to her own devices.
We really weren't brought up any big way. I always just had inside me that I believed in God and everything. But when our parents would take us to Sunday school, drop us off, and go home. We never went to church. We didn't do anything, but I always felt it inside me. And when I went to college, I met a friend, and she got me going to her church. It was a non-denominational church. And then that's where I got saved and just kind of went from there, but never really knew where to go, what church to go to kind of thing until I got up here into Olympia when I was like 21.
But obviously still had some sort of spiritual connection there, obviously.
Yeah, there's always been this pull to go and be part of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's in all of us. It's just whether or not we follow. There's that God thing in all of us. A little flicker in there. Flicker? Yes, flicker, as in light. Because in the beginning there was light, and it was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. Here we live with both, don't we? We see the light, we see the darkness. Darkness has a source. Light has a source, of course. The goal here, of course, is to stay focused on the light. Because someday the hope is we are all gathered again together with the light. Everybody's missing somebody, lost somebody, if not recent, then some time ago. But there's always that pain that stays. What do you want to say to them?
It's one of the hardest things ever. It's almost undescribable, the amount of emotions and feelings you have. I'm trying to get back to who I was, but trying to find joy in things is hard. It does start to come back a little bit. I'm just glad I got to see her grow up to an adult age, because I know people who have lost children and never got to see that. I've got to the point, of where I can function. But I really just try to pour my energy in on the other kids and help them. And then I don't know, there's just times I sense, like, I feel her next to me. Like driving down the road, I just literally feel like she's sitting next to me. And I've had this sense of peace come over me with the whole thing, and I feel like I can almost separate myself from my life, and I can look at the big picture, and I can think, okay, we're just here for a temporary time on earth here. This is just a little mimic of time to the big picture of everything that's going on. And somehow I can see that and I can feel that. And it helps me somehow, because I know we will see her again, and I know she's probably up there. Oh, I can't wait till they get up here. Just show them everything, and I'm just so thankful for all these things that happen, because it's so big part of healing. And it just confirms to me that she's still out there, and we're going to see her again, and it's real.
Yep, it's all real. Isn't that amazing? It's all real, every bit of it. Thanks, Angela. Or I could pronounce your name Angel A. Well, Angel A, Angela, what's our takeaway? What did God just say in this episode? As the headline says on this episode, lamps don't belong under beds. And Angela keeps no lamps under the bed. She is so free and easy with sharing these stories of showing God's love, how over and over again. And so much of this is because Angela keeps looking upwards to heaven, that God just keeps pouring down his blessings on Angela and the family with these experiences, just one after another, fortifying the faith, keeping her close. When times are especially tough, God is there, and you feel that love, just that ongoing love. I look from the beginning of the dream of Jesus giving her assurance it's going to be okay in her college years, to an angel appearing through that darkness, to a guardian angel saving the family at that intersection. The firefighter on Easter morning at that intersection, what? That's just, that he would be there to resuscitate Kaylee, to get the helicopter there so that the family can gather for a few more days with Kaylee. It's everything. Everything just connects so beautifully, showing God's love and blessings. Just tremendous. Thanks again, Angela. Appreciate it. Now then, what is your story? Start typing.
And then I just started typing.
That's all it takes. Just start typing your story. Go to touchedbyheaven.net. Contact me there, and love to talk to you real soon. Also, our shout out this week for Patreon and support. If you feel blessed by these episodes, we hope you would consider supporting us financially through Patreon. Go to patreon.com, just search for Trapper Jack, or go right here to episode 93 at touchedbyheaven.net. Our Patreon shout out this week goes to June Pierce Novotny. Thanks, June, for helping us out through Patreon. Appreciate it. All right, I will see you next week here at Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.